Why do some people enter their centenary with sharp minds and steady composure, while others begin to lose strength and balance long before old age actually arrives? I am 99 years old as I speak these words. I have buried friends, siblings, even habits that once felt inseparable from who I was. And now at this age, when nothing needs to be exaggerated and nothing needs to be sold, I want to tell you one simple truth I learned the slow way. What you choose not to put into your body can matter more than what you add. People often ask me about secrets. They expect something mystical, an herb, a routine, a miracle food. But longevity rarely comes from magic. It comes from restraint, from knowing when to step away from something that quietly erodes you over time. Alcohol was one of those things. I am not speaking as a doctor. I am not offering a cure. I am speaking as a woman who has watched the long arc of cause and effect stretch across decades. I watch people who drank normally. I watch people who drank socially. I watch people who believe moderation made them immune. And I watched slowly what it did to their bodies, especially their livers. My decision was not dramatic. I did not quit because I was sick. I quit because I understood risk. Alcohol asks the liver to work harder every single time. Not once, not occasionally, every time. And over a lifetime, that work accumulates. This story is not about healing damaged organs or reversing disease. It is about protection, about choosing a path that reduces harm before harm announces itself. In the parts that follow, I will share what I observed, what I avoided, and why a single clear choice, not drinking alcohol, became one of the quiet pillars that carried me to this age. When you live long enough, patterns stop being theories. They become evidence written in faces, in hospital rooms, in phone calls that come too late. I did not need charts or studies to notice what repeated itself again and again. I only needed time. In my 20s and 30s, alcohol was everywhere. It was celebration. It was relaxation. It was how people marked endings and softened beginnings. No one thought in decades. We thought in evenings. We thought in weekends. The idea that something so ordinary could quietly shape an entire lifespan felt exaggerated, almost rude to suggest. Yet the body never negotiates with social customs. It only responds to chemistry. What I saw first was not collapse, it was fatigue. Friends who always seemed a little more tired than they should be. Skin that lost clarity sooner. Mornings that began slower, heavier. These were dismissed as stress, as work, as aging. Alcohol was never named because its damage is polite. It does not shout. It accumulates. The liver, I learned, is generous. It absorbs insult and keeps working. It filters toxins without complaint. It repairs itself when it can. And because it is so forgiving, people mistake forgiveness for invincibility. They believe that because they feel fine, they are fine. That misunderstanding costs decades. I watched friends who drank responsibly reach their 50s with blood tests that no longer looked normal. Numbers crept upward. Doctors used cautious language. Keep an eye on this. Maybe cut back a little. But habits built over 30 years do not loosen easily. The liver adapts until one day it cannot. Some people imagine that liver damage belongs only to extremes, to addiction, to excess. That is comforting because it lets moderation feel safe. But moderation over a lifetime can still mean tens of thousands of exposures, each one small, together significant. I did not need tragedy to decide. I needed clarity. I noticed that those who avoided alcohol aged differently. Their energy did not spike and crash. Their sleep was more stable. Their appetite followed natural rhythms instead of chemical ones. And when illness came, as it eventually does for everyone, their bodies had more reserve. Their livers were not already busy paying old debts. This is where I want to be precise. Avoiding alcohol did not make anyone immortal. It did not protect them from cancer, accidents, infections, or grief. But it removed one persistent burden, and removing a burden matters when you are asking a body to last a century. There is something else people do not talk about: decision fatigue. Alcohol blurs judgment not only in the moment, but in the habits that follow. Late meals, poor sleep, skipped movement. Over time, one choice cascades into many. By choosing not to drink, I also chose clarity. That clarity protected more than my liver. It protected my routines. I watched men and women who drank struggle with medications later in life. The liver metabolizes nearly everything. When it is already compromised, treatments become complicated. Dosages shrink. Side effects grow. Recovery slows. What once seemed like a harmless pleasure becomes a limiting factor in care. I was not harsh with myself. I did not moralize. I simply asked a practical question. What does this cost over 50 years? The answer was clear enough that I did not need willpower. I needed alignment. Some people told me I was missing out. They thought joy required intoxication. But joy, I learned, does not need assistance. It needs presence. Alcohol offers intensity without depth. Presence offers depth without cost. I slept better. I woke clearer. My digestion stayed steady. These are unglamorous benefits, but unglamorous things build long lives. The liver thrives on consistency. It does not ask for perfection. It asks for relief. I want to emphasize a boundary here because accuracy matters. Not drinking alcohol does not guarantee a healthy liver. Other forces exist: genetics, viruses, metabolic conditions, medications, environmental toxins. Avoidance is not immunity, it is mitigation. And mitigation is powerful precisely because it is modest and realistic. Over the years, I also noticed how language softened responsibility. People said, "The liver heals itself." That is true, within limits. Healing requires time without repeated injury. A wound cannot close if it is reopened nightly. Abstinence gave my body uninterrupted time. That is all. No miracle. Just time. As I moved into my 70s and 80s, the differences widened. Friends who had drunk lightly but consistently now faced fatty liver disease without understanding why. They were confused. They had never been heavy drinkers. Yet the liver does not calculate morality. It calculates load. Meanwhile, my own tests remain stable. Not perfect, stable. And stability is a victory at this age. I did not evangelize. Everyone chooses their own trade-offs. But when younger people asked me what mattered most, I did not talk about supplements or secrets. I talked about subtraction, about removing what quietly drains resilience. Alcohol drains resilience. This part of my story is not dramatic because reality rarely is. It is cumulative, it is slow, it is honest, and it is why, when I say don't drink alcohol to protect your liver, I am not making a promise of miracles. I am describing a pattern I watched repeat itself for nearly a century. By the time you reach my age, you stop arguing with reality. You stop defending choices out of pride. You only keep what continues to work. Everything else falls away. My choice not to drink alcohol was never framed as sacrifice. It was framed as preservation. I did not ask, "What am I giving up?" I asked, "What am I protecting?" That question changes everything. The liver does not live in isolation. It sits at the center of balance: blood sugar regulation, fat metabolism, detoxification, hormone processing. When it struggles, nothing else stays simple. When it functions steadily, the rest of the body has room to compensate for aging elsewhere. That is the difference between decline that accelerates and decline that slows. What alcohol does, even in small amounts, is interrupt that balance. It demands priority processing. The liver must stop what it is doing to deal with it. That interruption happens every time. Over decades, interruptions become a pattern. Patterns become outcomes. I chose consistency. Without alcohol, my eating stayed regular. I did not skip meals or overeat late at night. My blood sugar remained predictable. My sleep deepened instead of fragmenting. These effects are rarely credited to the liver, but they pass through it. A calm liver creates a calmer system. There is another protection people rarely mention: inflammation. Alcohol promotes low-grade chronic inflammation, not the kind you feel immediately, but the kind that stiffens joints, clouds thinking, and slows recovery. By avoiding alcohol, I reduced a constant inflammatory signal. Again, not a cure, a reduction. As the years passed, I noticed how my body responded to stress. Illnesses came as they do: infections, minor surgeries, periods of grief. Each time, recovery mattered more than resistance. The liver's role in recovery is enormous. When it is not already compromised, the body can focus its energy where it is needed most. I watched others struggle with medications that once helped them. Pain relievers became dangerous. Sleep aids became unpredictable. Blood pressure drugs required constant adjustment. The liver, already taxed, could not manage the load. Avoiding alcohol preserved flexibility. It kept options open. This is an important distinction. Not drinking does not make life risk-free. It makes it more adaptable. Aging is not about avoiding problems. It is about retaining margin. Alcohol consumes margin. Some people assume that abstinence is rooted in fear. For me, it was rooted in respect. Respect for how the body actually works. Respect for the fact that damage does not need to be dramatic to be decisive. I also want to be clear about something else. This choice did not isolate me socially. I learned early that presence matters more than participation. I attended celebrations. I toasted with water. I laughed just as hard. Alcohol was never the source of connection. It was a prop people leaned on when connection felt awkward. As I aged, that clarity became an advantage. My mind stayed sharper. Not because alcohol destroys intelligence, but because it disrupts sleep and increases neuroinflammation, two things the aging brain cannot afford. The liver and brain are partners. When one is burdened, the other pays. I did not count years, I counted function. Could I wake up without stiffness? Could I think clearly in the morning? Could I recover from a poor night of sleep? Those answers stayed mostly yes. And while many factors contributed, removing alcohol removed a persistent variable that worked against all of them. Now, let me draw a firm boundary, because honesty requires it. Avoiding alcohol does not erase genetic risk. It does not prevent viral hepatitis. It does not stop fatty liver disease caused by metabolic dysfunction. It does not guarantee longevity. Anyone who claims otherwise is lying or simplifying. What it does is reduce unnecessary strain. Protection is not perfection. Protection is subtraction. In my 90s, I saw friends who had only a glass or two struggle to understand why their bodies could no longer keep up. They felt betrayed by moderation, but moderation over 50 years is still exposure. The body remembers totals, not intentions. My liver did not remain young, it remained capable. And capability is what you want when the margin for error shrinks. I never told people what to do. I still don't. But if you ask me what single controllable decision consistently protected my liver over a lifetime, the answer is uncomplicated. I chose not to drink. That choice did not make headlines. It did not feel heroic. It simply removed a known source of harm. And over 99 years, removing harm matters more than adding hacks. In the final part, I will leave you with what this decision taught me about prevention, patience, and why the quiet choices are the ones that carry you the farthest. So let me end where I began, not with a claim, but with a question. If you knew that one small, repeatable decision could quietly reduce harm over the next 50 years, would you dismiss it because it feels ordinary? At 99, I have learned that the body keeps a ledger. It records what you ask of it and how often you ask. Alcohol is not dramatic enough to feel dangerous in the moment, yet demanding enough to matter over time. The liver pays that cost patiently until patience runs out. I did not avoid alcohol to be pure, disciplined, or exceptional. I avoided it because I respected accumulation. I understood that protection is rarely about dramatic intervention. It is about removing what does not serve you before damage needs a name. This choice did not make me immune to illness. It did not promise longevity. It did not erase biology. What it did was preserve capacity. It gave my liver fewer battles to fight so it could do the work it was designed to do, day after day, decade after decade. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Prevention is not denial. It is foresight. Choosing not to drink alcohol is not about fear of harm. It is about allowing your body the longest possible window to function without unnecessary strain. You do not need a diagnosis to protect yourself. You do not need a crisis to justify restraint. You only need honesty about how time multiplies small decisions. I have lived long enough to see that the quiet choices outlast the loud ones, and among all the decisions I made, this one required the least effort and returned the most stability. Protecting your liver does not begin in a hospital. It begins in the ordinary moments when no one is watching, and those moments, repeated patiently, are what carried me here.